Following program has adult language and potentially tons and tons of spoilers. Listener beware.
Digging on the comics. Guess I still dig them when I'm 6x6. Digging my kicks. Digging on the comics. I like to save them. And I like to trade them. I read them. I need them. I'm living every page.
The entire comic book industry, besides Marvel and DC, is undervalued by the general public. As comic aficionados, as fans of the art form and the medium, we'd like to have a podcast out there that covers the entire rest of the industry, besides the so-called big two, besides just superheroes, though we'll cover them as well. And for that purpose, we will be your underguides. The Eel Mac.
I'm digging on the comics.
Mr. Joe Fixit.
So you're trying to pop my comic cherry again.
And myself, Frank.
I've been wanting to get back to Underguides for a long time. It's been like 2.5 years since we did Underguides. And so I want to do something kind of novel, something a little bit different to bring us back in on that show. So I've been buying most of the books published by a company called Alterna Comics. And the reason why I like this company is because they've gone old school. They print on something a little bit better quality than newsprint.
Okay.
Full color comics for $1.50 an issue. And so I've been buying everything they've been putting out at that price point because I think that's great. Now, I don't know how great it is for the talent because I'm sure they're basically doing it for exposure. I mean, to make the books that cheap, I don't imagine there's a lot of money coming in off these books.
No, but you're going to get your name out there. Your books are more affordable. More people. It's going to be in more people's hands.
That's what I'm thinking is that you're going to have increased visibility. I appreciate the attempt to make comic books cheaper because I do think that's a major hurdle that's hurting the industry is how expensive the shit's gotten. I do think that the big collapse that Marvel's experienced recently has a lot to do with producing $4 comics that you can read in 4 minutes. So I've been buying everything that Alterna Comics has been producing. I've not read anything, okay? In part because I've been trying to build up for what I want to do today. I want us to go and look at essentially a virtual spinner rack from our youth when we were kids, old school comic book style, where you would walk into a bookstore or a newsstand at a convenience store and you'd look at what they have on a shelf. You don't know who any of the fucking characters are. You don't know who any of the creators are. You're just looking at a month's worth of those books and picking something up off of the newsstand. A little bit of a game aspect to this. So we're going to walk into a room. We're going to look at, I think it's 11 titles that I've picked up so far. You're not going to know which ones have had consecutive issues. You're not going to know the people who are involved with the product. You're going to pick something based on what looks good to you. You're going to read it. We're going to talk about it. I've, again, not read any of these, so I can't argue with you. There's no debate about it, but we'll basically talk about what we read, and then we're going to decide whether or not we want to read the second issue of that book, assuming it's available, or buy another title, pick up another book. And we'll go for as long as we've got time to and feel like doing it. Sounds good?
I like
Russian
it.
roulette.
I've actually set up the books in one of your back rooms, and we're going to go and look
Oh, the
at
dungeon, you mean?
and we're going to just go look at the shelf and see what we want to pick up and read.
Okay.
It's like a Vato Walden books.
Turn the knob, KTO, some Alterna radio. Strategic marketing, meaning a stereo.
So again, the whole point was supposed to be like a spinner rack or a magazine rack. Pick it up blind and see what worked out for you.
I had that feeling.
Yeah, that's
Strange
what
white
she-
man staring at me as a little brown person walks around the store.
I was
Absolutely that feeling.
Yeah, I was watching you guys from the couch. So
Yeah.
it's the retailer in there. What can I tell you? So we each picked a comic book and we'll kind of go around, and we did have a little bit of a cheat though. Mac was actually able to burn through his first issue so quickly that he managed to pick up 1 and 2, which is a thing that we used to be able to do back in the day. You'd have the first issue still sitting around and be able to grab 2 issues. So that's what we're going to pretend
Maybe at a
happened here.
Kroger's, yeah.
No, at the convenience stores too.
Really?
Somebody had to actually go back and pull those books and return them, and they didn't always do the good job. Or sometimes somebody would stash them somewhere where they weren't supposed to be, like stick them in a
I just
magazine
remember
or
going to
something.
Kroger's and there would be multiple issues behind each other. Like they would keep multiple issues. I remember that.
What? What?
I don't remember that. No,
I remember.
I think that my awareness of return policy is that was probably a store by store kind of thing, and your store apparently didn't do their shit right, because that means that store was losing money because they were getting counted as selling those copies that were left over.
All I know is you would walk up and sometimes the books would still be in their little, was it the zip line sealant to hold them together?
Oh, you're talking about 3-packs?
Yeah. Oh, no. Remember how the magazine would come and they would be, I guess, what is it, like a plastic line that was holding them together? And you'd have
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, you would go there and they would be there, like off to the side, like someone.
They weren't
didn't put them
supposed
on
to
the
be,
rack.
though.
Yeah, nobody even put them on a rack yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Probably the people at the store just weren't
didn't give a
starting
shit.
them around like they're supposed to, yeah.
It's in the hood, man. They didn't give a shit.
We're going to go ahead and start with you since you're already talking anyway. What book did you choose?
I don't remember the title. Where is it at?
You chose The Wicked Righteous, number 1 of a 6-issue limited series by Terry Mayo, Lucas Romero, Christopher Hall, and Brandon DeStefano. $1.50. What was The Wicked Righteous about?
Pretty much The Walking Dead.
Yeah?
Felt like it. Yeah, it felt very Walking Dead-ish.
Well, so what's the basic
So
premise, though?
you start off the book with all the adults dying of some mysterious virus. Some of them think of it as the second coming. Like they're like, the Lord Jesus is promising us a promised land. I think the mom and dad are dying and they're worried about their boys, their 4 sons. The parents apparently are all dying across the world, which was kind of weird. I don't think all parents, I just think, I don't know, it didn't really specify, but their parents died. So there's a virus, traveling around killing everyone.
Is it age-based or is it procreation-based?
No, it's not, because there's an uncle that's with them who's older.
Okay, so if you're a breeder, you're dead.
I'm assuming. I'm not
Sorry,
sure.
Mr. Mac.
I'm not sure, but people are just dying.
I just want to clarify. I am a breeder.
Yeah. I'm assuming
I'm proud of
they
it.
didn't say if the uncle had kids. So, and then the story starts up with this kid's raiding a CVS type location, and a little blonde boy comes in and he almost accidentally kills him. And they're talking about how the main character Lucas, who almost shot this blonde kid Billy, is trying to get some medication because his brother apparently has asthma, and decides they can't leave because there's these drones flying around, but they're not really saying what's about the drones. And there's a lot of cursing in this book. They dropped the F-bomb. I mean, that's why I asked you, I was like, is this comic code protected? It was weird because I'm reading it and they were like right off the shoot were curse words. So I was like, okay, we're adult area. All right. Lucas is sleeping. He's having some kind of weird dream about a girl. He's awoken by Billy. Then Lucas tells Billy, look, I got to go back to my home. My family's waiting for me. They need me. I can't take you with me. And that Billy kid just loses his shit. And again, Billy's like maybe 10 or 11 and he loses his shit. Lucas is leaving, runs into his brother and his uncle. And they're talking about, hey, we need to get back to our lair, I guess, because your brother's sick. He could have had an asthma attack. Why didn't you come back? And Lucas is having heavy guilt on him because he's like, dad would have never left someone behind. So his older brother's like, well, don't worry, we'll go back and let's go get Billy. They go back and Billy he told Lucas he was going to regret it. And he's written, I hate you, Lucas. You're going to burn, real psycho. And so the uncle's kind of like, I guess we dodged a bullet with this one because this kid looks kind of psycho. And then all of a sudden you go to this girl being kidnapped by some punks. And the book seemed kind of jumpy there because I wasn't sure. And Lucas and this group run into them. Apparently she had beat up one of the punks, but there's a bounty on her head and they're trying to get out of there. And Lucas and them decide they're going to try to help her. I don't know if she's part of their group. And they start fighting the punks. I think someone gets shot, but I wasn't sure who. I mean, there's one of the punks that gets shot and they don't know where the bullets are coming from. And then get to the end of the book and one of the punks is standing above the group ready to shoot him and then his head's blown off completely. And there's a guy behind him saying, God didn't kill you. Someone didn't kill you. I killed you. And then that's it. So it seemed a little jumpy. There was no real character development. Like I didn't know who was who or who was where. I thought it was the second issue when I was reading it. That's why if you saw, I kept looking at the cover like, did I get issue 2 by accident? Like
and you took the longest to read your issue because it sounded like yours was pretty involved.
No, there's a lot of dialogue, but I had to slow down and like, wait a minute, did I miss a page? There seems like there's something missing. They're like, why is this girl being kidnapped now? Like they didn't explain that. It didn't explain back at their lair. It's just some girl's being kidnapped and there's a bounty on her head from these punks that are, or the sociopaths that they refer to them because they're, I guess, roaming. There's a very Mad Max feel to it. Like, there's your psychopaths looking for, I guess, fuel and shit. I don't know. It didn't really explain. I like the artwork. It was very simplistic. Not simplistic, but very basic. It wasn't very detailed, but it definitely matched the story and helped drive the story, which kept me going. I would pick up the second one just to see where it was going, to see if it got any better. If it didn't get better by the next one, I'd just walk away from it completely. Okay. It had an interesting premise, but it's a premise that has been done 1,000 times, sometimes way better. But for the price, I mean, you can't beat it. And it was an adult book. It wasn't like I was reading a fucking Archie comic and shit for $1.50 that I'd be blowing my brains out over. I'd give it one more a shot. If it didn't get more coherent or have a set track or kind of give me something to bring me back, I'd walk away.
We're going to move on to Mr. Illegal Machine. Which book did you pick up?
I think it was, is it just Trespasser?
Yes.
Or The Trespasser?
It's just Trespasser. It's a 4-issue miniseries by Justin M. Ryan, Christian Rossi, and DC Hopkins. $1.50 came out last year. So what's this one about?
So this one's basically The Walking Dead.
I see a running theme here.
No.
Well, I was going to say that Mr. Fixes actually sounded like one of my favorite books growing up, The Girl Who Owned a City, which was the exact same premise, except there were no adults at all. I think puberty was when everybody died off. But it was about a world basically run by kids, basically Lord of the Rings writ large. That's what that sounded like.
No, you mean Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies.
Sorry, Lord of the Flies writ large, yes.
He's like Lord of the Rings. I'm like, when did children run around with rings on them? Like, I don't remember that part.
I have been drinking.
It starts off where it's rustic. They're out in like a rural area. It's a guy and his daughter, and something terrible has happened to the earth, and you don't know what it is, but they've secluded themselves. Oh, and their dog. And I think there's only a hint. You can kind of tell the dog looks a little deformed, but you can't really, they don't, it's all shadowed. You can't really tell. It looks like it's like an extra set of arms or whatever. So anyway, they go out hunting. I should say it's kind of like a mix between The Walking Dead. I really said The Walking Dead more because you said The Walking Dead, but it's a little Walking Dead. That was the first thing that popped in my mind, but it was actually more kind of like The Road, which I don't know if you guys ever saw The Road.
I never saw that. Did you?
No, it's on my list
This
to
is
watch.
obviously some post-apocalyptic world where this guy is trying to survive with his daughter. To say it's like The Walking Dead is kind of bullshit because The Walking Dead is sort of like a billion other things, right? Before that happens, he's fixing his daughter breakfast, and she's like, no, you eat it all. And she's like, oh, Daddy, but you can tell you're hungry. You need to eat. He's like, no, I'll eat later. So obviously resources are scarce. It's sort of all cliche at this point. They go out to hunt, and as they hunt, the dog catches a bird, and he points at what appears to be like a Geiger counter at it. I couldn't tell if it was a Geiger counter or what it was, but it was something that reads a number, and he was like, whoa, well, you can have that one, meaning the number of whatever it's reading is high, and he doesn't want to. Right, radiate. Right, exactly. So he's not going to eat it. So lets the dog eat it, and then they hear something screaming from one of the traps, and they go over to the trap, and it's like a gray, like an alien, like classic big-headed, skinny-limbed alien in a space suit trapped in one of his bear traps. So he frees him. He's got like a laser pistol that he frees him, takes him home, and he's like helping him get all bandaged up, and he's going to the daughter's like, oh, who's this guy? He's like, he's a passerby who got hurt. We're going to help him get back on his feet or whatever. By the end of the first issue, so there's a scene where they take the dude's pistol because the daughter wants to shoot it because she has, she's like, I want to shoot it. And he's like, well, let me shoot it first to see what it does. So he has her step aside and he takes like a shoot out in their barn and it like blows the whole barn to pieces. This is obviously this alien destructo rays, this tiny little, because it's just a tiny little pistol.
You mean the noisy cricket from...
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, kind of. So they go in and he's like going through the dude's pockets and he finds a map. I don't know if I was supposed to be able to tell what the map was a map of, like if it was a aerial shot of their farm or what it was supposed to be. But before that, he's having conversations with him like, hey man, I wish you could talk. I've always been a loner, but my wife, before she died, they keep hinting that his wife passed away at some point during this whole ordeal. Back in the old days, I was standoffish and now I wish I had more people around to talk to. The only people that stop by here don't have good intentions, more Walking Dead Road kind of stuff, where people are all desperate. So if you see other humans, they're the bigger threat than anything else. Once he finds this photo on him, he kind of just is like, look man, I don't know what you're here for. I don't know what you're doing. You can't talk. You can't communicate with me, but I'm sorry, but I got to do this. And he grabs his machete and he kills the alien and he uses the dead alien to feed his family. And that's how the first issue ends. Did not see that coming by the end of the first. I was like, holy shit. So he's literally like skeletoning the guy up and then serves it to the family.
Little Matt was so excited by Trespasser that he hopped on his bike and rode up to the convenience store in hopes of finding a second issue. And sure enough, he finds Trespasser number 2 and goes ahead and reads that before myself or Mr. Fix can even finish our first issues.
Not a lot of dialogue in Trespasser number 1. A lot of visuals. And then anyway, they show also at the end of issue 1 where he buried the laser and everything out in the backyard along with the dude's suit. So the next issue, he notices that he doesn't feel so good the next day, right? And he's got like some boils on his skin. He's having his daughter go check and make sure that she's fine and everything like that. The next morning, she's like, Daddy, there's something wrong. And he's like, what? He's like, I saw the man. He's back. Because she was like, hey, what happened to our guest? And he's like, oh, he got better. I helped him. He went on his way. And she was like, really? I thought you said it was going to be weeks for him to get better. He's like, no, he was fine. He just left. So anyway, the next day, she's like, oh, he's back. I saw him outside. So he runs out with the dog and he was like, get inside, lock the doors. The dog runs off and the dog just keeps going and he can't get the dog to come back. So he runs back to the house. And as he's come back to the house, he's getting sicker and sicker. He falls down and is like almost passing out. And he's noticing that the blisters are all over his body. He gets into the house finally and his daughter's like, yeah, I saw him. I saw the stick man or whatever she's calling him outside. So he was like, you got to get inside the house, barricade okayed it all up. I'm gonna get in bed. He goes, I have to rest. Shoot anything that moves that isn't Bella, the dog. So she's like, okay. And then at some point, he wakes up because she fires the gun because they show the bottom of the door. You can see the light coming through the bottom of the door, and there's like 2 legs standing there. So she fires the gun that wakes him up, and he was like, what did you do? She's like, I'm sorry. I thought I saw a shadow. And they walk over and they open up the door, and there's another spacesuit on the ground with like a crop circle burned into the floor underneath it. And that's how issue 2 ends. Despite the cliches, it's still pretty intriguing. You do kind of wonder, one, this is only a 4-issue series, and I just read 2 in 6 minutes. You want to know what happened to the planet. Was it alien invasion? Was it nuclear war? Was it a disease? Or what was it that wiped everybody out? 2, you wonder why the hell a space alien was there. You want to know why the space alien was around their house. You want to know why he's so desperate that he had to eat a space alien and feed it to his daughter. You want to know why he's got the blisters all over his body. You want to know why they're seeing more, and you want to know why this second alien that she shot seems to have vanished into thin air, leaving just their suit behind. Again, we're gonna keep coming back to the price point thing. At the price point, yeah, I'd keep picking these up, man. Nothing but more questions. And now, obviously, this is something that could go south as quickly as it went north, right? But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought the art was just perfectly fine. It was not offensive at all. And with as little dialogue as there is, the art does a great job of plugging the gaps in the story and between speaking parts. So down with Trespasser so far.
So your intention when we go back to the store is to pick up issue number 3?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I might even start a fan blog.
So my book was Amazing Age, first issue of a 5-issue limited series, $1.50 price point, by Matthew David Smith, Jeremy Massey, and Christine Brunson. Action-packed first issue, full color. This is a quick read. The story starts with one group of costume superheroes fighting another group of costume superheroes. I wasn't able to determine who was the good guys or who were the bad guys. It turned out not to matter because it was actually the fantasy created by a young boy who's drawing his own comic books and showing them around to his friends. He basically has created a team called JET, J-E-T, it's an acronym for something, and they are a trio of superheroes that are based on the artist and his buddies, an African-American kid and a girl. They're talking about the adventures he's creating, and then it turns out that something has happened to the creator's father, and then it jumps 5 years into the future, and none of those kids are friends anymore, and they make a point of showing that they just completely separated from one another, although the girl, Violet, still has concerns about the creator. She wants him to go visit his dad's grave and stuff, and he's like, he's not going to notice if I don't show up. Become the asshole who smokes cigarettes under the bleachers. African-American kid is like in the football team now, and he doesn't really have anything to do with that. Going about their separate ways, and then all of a sudden in like their lockers and stuff, and the first issue of Amazing Age with the same cover as the comic book appears, which features them as superheroes, like, hey, I remember this, and just they start to read, they vanish, and at the end of the issue, the creator wakes up, and a doctor is tending to him because he was supposed to have passed out in class, and it turns out the doctor is like the superhero from his little universe, going, I'm, Dr. Blades, or whatever the hell the guy's name was, and so he's basically gone into the fantasy world apparently, and then it ends there, and then at the end of the book, there's a few pages where the creator, the actual creator, Matthew David Smith, is talking about how when he was a kid, he used to create his own comic books, and these were the characters from his comic books, and he decided when he found those old books that he would revisit that, tell stories about these characters, where he could revel in that nostalgia while also telling a new story for modern audiences. I found the book was just a little too quick to read. There wasn't enough depth to it. Price point's a major aspect. At $1.50, I've bought this book. I will continue to buy this book until it is completed, assuming I haven't already read. We'll read it, but honestly, my intention when we go back to the room is I'm going to go ahead and check out another book because it just didn't grab me the way that I would need it to. It was cute. It was all right. For the price point, I've got no problems with having bought it, but I'm just not jazzed about reading issue number 2 as much as I am about checking out something new. Art was okay. It's intentionally juvenile. It's intentionally indie. I think they're trying to contrast the superhero stuff with a more indie comic sensibility. I like the way that Mac put it. It wasn't offensive, but I wouldn't buy it specifically for the art. Although I am glad that it is in color. I think that if it were not in color, it would really lose something because you need those primaries to make it pop in a way that the art isn't able to do.
Because I think honestly, these books, the only reason I picked my book was the art off the bat.
Okay.
When we were at the stand, and
what was the violence a contributing factor?
That caught me off guard too. I'm like, well, this kind of I tried not to read any of the dialogue. I just kind of skimmed, and I tried to jump multiple pages just to kind of get a feel for the book and the artwork out of all the books. There was one book there that I saw that the cover, I was interested by the cover, and then I opened the book itself, and I'm just like, yeah, I couldn't get through this book. Like the art's just, I can't stand this artwork. It would be a chore to get through it. So to me, the $1.50 helps, but it doesn't hurt if you have some nice art to it. Because I mean, as a kid, that's going to be the first thing that draws your eye to the book. It's not going to be, oh look, it's whatever your book was. It's going to be, hey, it looks kind of cool, and it's only $1.50. I'll buy it.
Why did you pick yours, Mac?
It had a cool dog in it.
You are a dog person.
No, I thought the art looked pretty good. Like I said, the art looked pretty. I really had my expectations low when you were setting this up when we walked in there, but like the paper quality is really not that bad.
It's better than what we had when we were kids. It's
yeah,
better
I
than
mean,
the newsprint
the
we
colors
read.
are a little washed out because of it.
Yeah,
But
I like that. I like that. It kind of reminded me of the
Yeah.
old comics. I was thinking of the old like X-Men when you would look at Art Adams's art style with that kind of what'd you say?
Like you said, washed out, kind of
washed out.
you know,
It kind of gave to it. It kind of gave it some depth. I liked it.
But anyway, it looked, because like I said, I thumbed through it and I saw where it started and I was like, oh, this is sort of like a dystopian future, and then it ended with like a random Area 51 alien, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like,
And
so
actually-
that was kind of why I picked it up.
Sorry, I actually liked all the little advertisements in it too.
Yeah, it's
That
kind of
kinda
cool.
that
like,
took me
did
back.
y'all? I don't know.
I
did
missed
you,
that.
Did you guys have the same ads I did?
I don't know. I had ads in mind. I just I like that.
I had something where you like invest in comics and you can get like templates for creating your own comics and 33 books if you sign up for this program.
I actually stopped and read all my advertisements.
Oh, me too. Totally. Yeah.
I sat
I
down.
didn't ring a student one. I was going so fast through the book, I just skipped
Really?
it.
That was one thing. Like growing up, Frank, you remember? When you spent money on comics, that
You
was a
read the
lot.
whole thing, yeah.
So you read everything. I would read anything. I would even read when it was produced, just because I wanted to make sure I got my money's worth out of everything that I read. So I really enjoyed. I liked when I was sitting there. I was like, "Hey, look, advertisement." I flipped through a floppy note not too long ago, and that was the one thing I noticed. Like, it's just straight book, so it felt so thin. And I was like, "Okay, no advertisements." Real quick though, last time we went shop hopping the other time, Marvel had something like this on the shelves. I almost picked one up for $1, but it was old X-Men issues.
Oh, yeah, it's what they call True Believers. I've picked
Okay,
up a
what
few
was-
of those
yeah.
too, where it's reprints of their older books for $1 as an entry level point for new readers.
I should have picked them up, but we were running around so
When,
much.
when it's $1, it's hard to turn it down.
Yeah, I was
right?
like, it's $1, and I'm like, I remember I told myself I'll come back, and then we just were talking, and we walked off, and I thought about, it, I was like, damn it, I should have picked them because I was like, that's kind of cool. I would buy like 5 or 6 of them and just like hand them out to family members, their kids, and like, hey, read this, like try to get hooked on this stuff.
Exactly,
Like,
yeah.
Get away from your tablet and read
Price
this.
point matters, and it's nice to. It's not that I hate reading digital stuff, but sometimes you just want to hold a book in your hands, and just toss through it like a magazine, just
It's
like
easier when
something
you're
you
on
leave
the-
back.
It's easier when you're on the toilet.
That too. But there's an ad for Plastic City Comic Con. There's an ad for a company that prints comic books, probably their printer. There's ads for the other books, which actually intrigued me. I think I know which book I'm going to jump over to based on the ads that they had in here. So you guys ready to go pick up your next round?
Sure.
Star Trek, comic books, mythology, video games, toys, Star Wars. Just about any geeky topic you can think of could be covered on the Hammer Podcasts, presented by Two True Freaks. Come join me, Gene Hendricks, for whatever my disjointed mental processes can come up with. And be careful, or you might just learn something before we're done. The Hammer Podcast is available monthly, both on its own iTunes feed and at twotruefreaks.com.
Hey everybody, I'm Paul Spataro. I don't know if you know me, but I'm a regular on Back to the Bins along with my friends Dr. Bill Robinson. Hello. And Mr. Scott Gardner.
Hey, how's it going?
Andy's been asking us for a promo for the show for the longest time, and Bill has been writing it for the longest time. Bill, you got that promo written yet? Okay, so, anyway, what we do is we review 3 comic books. We try to do it every week. Usually it's a Marvel, a DC, and a Captain Canuck book for Scott. So, tune in every week to Back to the Bins to listen to our show. You can find us at twotruefreaks.com.
We're going to start with Mac this time because once again, he finished his issue of Trespasser and was like, needed more, hopped on his bike, rode to the convenience store, no number 4.
I'm very pissed off right now.
You were very upset. You're like, oh, come on!
I've now read 3 of the 4 fucking issues, and I now have no idea when I'm ever going to see a 4th, if I will ever see a 4th issue. Not cool. Not cool.
But you're still into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like to. I'm right there on the precipice.
You want to know what's going to happen, right?
Right, I want to see what happens.
But not going to be able to talk about that, and there's no sense in spoiling 3/4 of the miniseries. So instead, we're going to talk about. Have you finished the book that you're reading
Yep,
now?
I'm all done.
Okay, so what did you decide to jump over to?
This is issue 1 in a 4-issue limited series of Doppelganger by Jordan Hart and Emmanuel Zirks Javier.
How much was it?
$1.50.
Okay, some of them are $1, so I want to give credit to the ones that are even cheaper than $1.50. We haven't picked up any of those though.
So this issue starts out with a car crash. Our star of the book, Dennis, is rear-ended in his Prius in his morning commute to work. He gets out, runs over to the car that hit him, and the person who hit him is this old white man who is like dead, and that's it. And Dennis is looking at him in horror saying, "Sir, call an ambulance." So from there, he's basically going to work, and everybody's like, "Dennis, get the hell out of here, dude. You were just in a car accident. Oh my God, get out." And he's like, "No, I'm fine." And they're like, "You got a concussion." And you find out why he's there. It's because he's got some asshole boss who's like, he just got his bell rung. He's fine, blah, blah, blah. So this dude basically rides Dennis's ass all day long. And they're like, "That's why you're here at work, is because this dude is just basically riding you like crazy." He goes home. He gets a ride home from a buddy of his who's like, "Hey, man, are we going to do our, it seems like they do D&D or something on Friday nights." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not really sure I'm feeling it." And he's like, "All right, maybe once, maybe on Friday we can go through like a couple campaigns. But as soon as the wife gets home, we got to call it quits." So he gets home. He's talking to his wife. His wife's like, "You shouldn't have gone to work. That's messed up." She's like, "I understand why you did it, but as soon as you get through with this management training, you got to quit." And there's a weird scene because the wife got everybody pizza with extra cheese because that's his favorite, I guess. So they're eating pizza, including the dog. And at one point, they're looking at the daughter goes, "Good boy, Mackie." That's the name of the dog. She says, "Good boy, Mackie, you douchebag." She calls the dog a douchebag, and then the parents have to yell at her for saying a naughty word. It just kind of came out of nowhere that she yelled at what the hell's calling a dog a douchebag?
Not just that, do people say douchebag anymore? Do people even know what a douchebag is anymore?
I don't know. Anyway, so he says he's gonna go walk the dog to clear his head. So he's walking the dog, keeps like closing his eyes, and every time he closes his eyes, he sees the face of the guy who died in the accident. And he's looking at his watch, and it's like 7:50. He looks again, it's like 8:05, and he gets home, and it's 8:20. And as he's getting to the door, the dog starts like freaking out, and he's like, "Man, chill out. The kid's asleep." And the door opens, and it's him coming out of the door, and he says, "Pleased to meet you in the flesh, Dennis." And he's like, "What?" So he's basically having this conversation with himself, and he's like, no, this is the concussion. This is all this is. My head's hurting. So the guy basically says, "Let's cut right to it. I'm you." An exact copy down to every single cell, as a matter of fact. But here's the kicker. I've got all your memories too. From the hyper peanut allergy to the computer's wizardry, we're perfectly identical. He goes like, "Hold on. Almost done. Time for the bad news. You're going to die in 36 hours. Don't ask me why. There are just certain rules to this thing. And until then, or until you kick the bucket, we cannot be seen together by another person. Trust me on this." He's like, "Sorry for the info dump. Over the centuries, I've learned that it's just better to just rip off the bandage, as they say. Anyway, your turn. Ask away." And the guy's just like, "This can't be real. What the fuck?" So they're both standing on the front porch of his house, and one of his neighbors jogs by, Jill. She jogs by going, "Hey, Dennis, how's it go?" "What the hell?" And then she just like evaporates into smoke. And the doppelganger's like, "If it makes you feel better, nobody believes me until they see a demonstration." And he's like, "What the fuck?" Like basically this guy incinerated his neighbor for seeing them in the same place. So then his wife starts to come outside the door, and he runs the hell out of there before she sees them both in the same place. And he was like, and anyway, he talks to her for a second. He's like, "Yeah, I'm glad you split because, man, I've done the single dad thing. It's not for me." So basically what he explains happens is the old man that rear-ended him, that was his last host body. We don't know what he is, if he's some sort of ghost or alien or whatever, but his last host body was the old man. And when he died in that accident, he has to take the form of the next human that he sees, which happens to be Dennis. And again, in less than 2 days, he's gonna die. This guy's gonna resume his life. Dennis tries to hit him with like a hammer and shit, and he blocks it and knocks him over. He's like, "Look, man, trust me, just take this money. I took it out of the bank account earlier. Go have yourself a great time because, your time's running out." And that's kind of how the book ends.
Interesting. How long is this miniseries?
4 issues.
Okay.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I agreed.
I was not expecting any of this shit. It's a pretty fucking original premise. So at the end of this issue, I was sorry, the art's okay. Okay, let's just knock the art out. Art's fine, but really the premise, I was like, what the fuck? Who is this doppelganger? How is he? Apparently he's lived for centuries this way. Is Dennis gonna get fucked, or is he gonna find some way to finally turn the tables on this doppelganger? Why does the doppelganger leave him alive? Is there some sort of gestation period where he has to leave the host alive for 36 hours before he can get rid of him? Otherwise, you figured he'd just kill him like he killed.
Well, then how did he make that woman evaporate too?
Yeah. So what kind of what powers does he have?
Well, did he actively do something, or did she just evaporate?
And I went back and I looked at the panel again. He's just standing there because I thought, maybe did he shoot him with a fucking ray or something?
Yeah.
And it was like, no, he was just standing next to him on the porch.
So I guess because they both exist on the same plane, people.
Yeah, but it's not like a time cop kind of shit where you can't touch the same. He's not the same person. They're two totally different beings because they're sitting there. He's got his arm around him. She just violated whatever this rule is because he insinuates that
I don't read that.
He's like, I don't make these rules. You just have 36 hours, so don't even ask about it. I don't make the rules. And it's like, what rules? So it was very, very interesting. And it was a fairly quick read, but there was definitely more dialogue in this issue than there was in the Intruder or Invader or whatever that series was called.
Trespasser.
Trespasser. So none of the things I said. The Trespasser. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this issue.
I just had reservations because the cover looks like a profile of Donald Trump.
It does. And that's actually, I was like, what the fuck? I thought the exact same thing. I thought it was a Trump profile. But it's obviously not. This is obviously Dennis, and the slight shadow is, I think that's unfortunate. I think they should have realized what they did there and probably not done that.
Or, well, actually, there's a lot of Trump comics out right now. Maybe they were trying to ride that wave.
No, it's possible.
So, as unit of entertainment, solid?
Yeah.
And you've had really good luck with picking books with interesting premises that like make you want to read the next issue.
Yeah.
So, and you want to read the next issue?
But whereas the first one was kind of cliched, this is something like where I'm like, I've never encountered anything. This is a very, very original idea. Or if it's not original, it's something super obscure that I've never heard of. Sure, we've seen, aliens or whatever in host bodies before that take over personalities and stuff, but this is totally different.
I was kind of thinking of that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where they create clones.
Junior? No, Sixth Day?
Sixth Day, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
I
what you're
kind of
talking
thought, I was like, oh, that sounds...
kind of, maybe a little bit.
I was like, that's kind of cool.
But there's a real difference between maybe finding something that's sort of similar and then thinking of a half dozen things where it's like, this is just like
But
this
I remember
other thing.
watching that movie thinking that's a cool premise. No one ever did something. This sounds like similar premise, but we took it to a next level where it's like, now we're putting something cosmic or supernatural behind it. That's kind of like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. That's all sciencey. So I would definitely check it out.
So down for number 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about Wicked Righteous 2? How'd that hold
Oh,
up?
I'm done.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's just confusing now. Like, I don't know where we're going with this book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they come across a character, Cross, who's the gentleman who killed the psychopath in the first one. The uncle's dying from a wound. I don't know where this book is going. Like, basically, the uncle makes Cross promise to take the boys back to their home. I feel like this is the middle part of a 6-part series, and I picked up issue 3 and 4. So
instead of 1 and 2.
I didn't read 1 and 2, so I'm not sure what happened, and I'm getting to the completion, but it's like that middle part, that little bridge in the middle. I'm done. Like,
you think you're on the bridge, but you're supposed to be at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm done. I have no desire to, even for $1.50, I wouldn't want to read the next one. I don't care anymore.
Ouch. The books have ads, as we've discussed. Was there any cool ads in either of your books this time?
They're already selling these books in the cases, the graded.
CGC?
Yeah. On the end of the book, I was just like, okay, come on now.
For real? Yeah.
Speculating a little bit here, but
I kept having ads for The Chair, which is another issue in there that I thumbed through.
That nobody
in
picks
the
up.
imaginary shop.
Well, it's a straight to Blu-ray movie too. I had
Right. And I kept because I saw some of those in the Intruder, Invader, Trespasser.
Yeah, and you were intrigued by the ads, and it's not an ad for the comic, it's an ad for the movie.
I was like, why am I seeing so many for this damn book? And I realized it was there's some sort of movie, straight to Blu-ray movie that it's an advertisement for, but it's the ad art is the same as the cover to number 1. That's why it was confusing to me.
Well, for all we know, the movie's what gave them the money to do this in the first place.
Right.
Maybe,
Who knows?
I mean, it seemed one on mine. The advertisement showed like all these books. There's a bunch of other books that apparently you didn't get a hold of or haven't come out yet.
To my knowledge, I've bought everything that's actually come out, but there are a number of books that haven't arrived yet. You haven't shipped yet. So
I thought it was kind of neat. I thought it was going to be one of those like, we only have 5 or 6 books, and it's like, no, look like they got a nice big number of books. So
I'm bringing you a selection of like 11 to begin with, and there's more on order. So I got sold on one of the ads: 6 people, 5 nations, 40 weapons, 32 meta mutations, 24 bounties, 1 crew. Coming June 2017, Scrimshaw, which is a $1.50 comic by Eric Borden, Dave Mims, and Spike Olokada. There's a lack of vowels in this person's name. So
that's weird because you seem to only pronounce vowels, so I'm not really sure that's possible.
Olokada. Okay, anyway, also on the cover, cyborgs, pirates, cutthroats, and mercs, and they're the good guys. So this book, the first thing I noticed when I crack open the cover is that the coloring is completely wrong for this type of paper. Involved coloring where you would need good quality paper to make it show, and instead the paper renders it all just like gray tones essentially. It's just really muddy and ugly. The art reminds me a lot of turn of the century Superman comics artists like Eric Canetta, a little bit of Eric Canetta, a little bit of what's that fucker's name? Kano, but who's the other one? The one that had a really crazy style.
Well, usually when you frank us, you don't ask for help, so.
Yeah, it'll come to me. But anyway, so the art's very kind of wild, but also under-realized. It's very stylish, but there are stuff that just feels like it's missing, like details that feel like they ought to be there. Kind of imagey in that respect, where they put a lot of detail in certain things and other things just like, where's your background? That kind of thing. And so basically, it's post-apocalyptic and, countries have risen and countries have fallen, and now how it's sort of one of these dystopian futures where all the cultures have bled together. And the main guy is this white dude who's dressed like a Bushido samurai. And then he's got a buddy who is like a Fukushima manipulator where he basically can control nuclear energy. And the first thing I'm thinking is too soon. And so they go to cowboy.
Do they reference Fukushima?
Yeah, literally they say Fukushima.
shit.
It's like too soon, way too soon. And so they go to a bar where they're going to bid on stolen property. These corporations that have their own mercenaries come bursting in and starting all kinds of trouble. And the Fukushima guy kills them with his nuclear powers. And they all go fuck off back to this ship where they're all living. And apparently everybody who's part of the Scrimshaw crew all live in this one big oil tanker thingy. And it's basically like Firefly. They've got like this chick there that's like his love. And there's all these people they're trying to support. And meanwhile, the corporations still want whatever it is that they bought on the black market. And so they're promising to have a big confrontation over that. This book sucked. I did not enjoy this. I really regret not sticking with Amazing Age. It's just cliche on top of cliche while also being confusing, not introducing a single goddamn character, busy art that I'm not into,
Here,
gross
just
colors.
stop talking and read Doppelganger.
I want nothing to do. And I've got more Scrimshaws on order. I will eventually read them begrudgingly.
That's a
But
shame
no.
because, like I said, when I was reading Doppelganger, there was an ad for Scrimshaw and it looked.
Oh no, that's the one I told y'all. I saw it, and the only reason I didn't pick it up was I looked at the artwork and I was just like, I just don't like.
Oh,
this
I thought
artwork.
for sure that was Chair.
No,
Because Chair
was one of
Chair
those
is
too.
brutal, bro.
That art style too, but this one was worse. The one you just read, Frank. I was just like, I looked at it and I'm like, the premise sounds so interesting, but God, this artwork is so fucking. To me, it's reminiscent to Earth X, where you had this great idea, and what was that? The artist friend.
Jean-Paul Leon.
Yeah. Oh, his artwork just fucking murdered it. It was just a crime scene. It was horrible. I've always wanted to read it, and I can do the dialogue, but once I start looking at the artwork, and I'm just like, oh, this is so fucking bad. It's just garbage.
For like half a second, I remember the name of that guy I was trying to remember, but Tanun Watt, I think is his name, who did Doom Patrol back in the early 2000s. The guy's style was that Duncan Rouleau, and there was another guy too who was doing Turn the Century Superman books, and I just was totally turned off by those art styles, and he reminds me of all those guys.
Oh no, that French guy,
Want
the
nothing
one
to
you
do
just
with it.
mentioned right now. That's the guy. Anything he draws, they did a great premise for Mr. Sinister that I really wanted to read, and he did the art,
Jean-Paul Leon did that one too.
and
yeah.
it was fucking.
That's the Further Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, I think.
Yeah, but it was such a cool premise because Sinister had been around. Because Sinister was kind of shown as being through time, and he'd been playing with mutations, so you almost got an idea that the mutants now were just his experiments from the past. But the artwork was so bad, I could never read those books.
I don't think Jean-Paul Leon's that bad.
Dude,
he's
oh
all right.
fuck, dude,
Honestly,
he's garbage.
I remember that Sinister series, and I thought that he worked on Sinister because it's
His
a lot
artwork
of
offended me.
Dr. Jekyll
It offended me.
laboratories with beakers and shit. I thought he worked.
But he would do this weird thing where he would put like blacks on top of blacks with gray. Like
that doesn't work for Mr. Sinister in Great Britain in the 1800s.
His apocalypse looked like I just saw a face with like black smears, and it was fucking god awful. His artwork. I hope he does not draw it anymore.
Oh, he totally does.
Shout out to
Still
Jean-Paul Leon.
Active, quite active, yeah. I'm in the middle of you two guys. I'm not a fan of his stuff, but I don't hate it either. Following Gene Ha on the first miniseries, which was really great looking, and also
Gene Ha is so dope.
Oh yeah.
On what book?
Well, further the Adventures of Gene. And then you go from that to John Paul Leon.
Yeah,
It's
sure,
like,
yeah, sure, yeah.
But yeah, I don't hate him, but I don't love him. I can
I
see where you're
fucking
coming
hate
at
him,
from, though.
absolutely.
Well, the problem with Earth X is that you had Alex Ross doing those covers and all that
Right.
promo art, and then you open it up in a Jean-Paul Leon. That's a shock, dude. I mean, you can't follow up Alex Ross with Jean-Paul Leon. I just don't think. And I think they felt the tone of Earth X was so dark, so let's get Jean-Paul Leon with all these blacks and moody. And I think that was probably
But the
not the
characters
best
didn't
thing to
even
do.
look like characters sometimes. Like
He is somewhat abstract.
it's there you go. If you're gonna do abstract, do a painting. But if you're gonna tell a story that you need the art and the words to kind of create the world, yeah, fuck off with that, dude. Like Bill Sienkiewicz can pull that off, but each page is like a painting in itself.
I think his storytelling skills are better than you're giving him credit for, but I'm just not excited when he does work on a book, though.
I find it offensive.
I don't tend to gravitate toward his books, but yeah, it's too bad they didn't do like a Doogie Braithwaite thing on Justice, where Alex Ross maybe could have done some gray tones over John Paul Leon. That would have been nice, but that's a whole other universe, whole other bunch of books. We're going to go in for next round of Alterna comics. So the intention is Mr. Fix is going to get something new, Mac's going to get something, the continuation, and I need to get something new or go back to Amazing Age. So let's see how it goes.
Once upon a time, 5 friends who met on the Bot Talk Transformers forum set out to develop a podcast dedicated to their various interests. Transformers, science fiction, fantasy, and comic books. Part fanboys and part assholes, they came to be known as the Fanholes. Their unbridled enthusiasm for podcasting did not end there, and soon enough, their proper podcast spun off into the Fanholes network of podcasts. Besides our podcast proper, the Fanholes soon had a continuum of genre-specific, focused shows such as Mobile Suit Mondays, Transformers Tuesdays, Toku Thursdays, and Sentai Saturdays. New weekly content can be found on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and fanholespodcast.blogspot.com. Fanholes Podcast, the pop culture podcast, made for the fans, by the fans.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And I'm Sean. We're here to tell you about our podcast, Worst Collection Ever.
And this is the show where we tell you about the worst comic book collection in existence. And it just happens to belong to us.
We have some of the worst comics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're bad. They're not worth anything.
No good.
Why do we own them?
Bad.
I own a number of issues of Terror Inc. and Guy Gardner.
Basically, we go around to local comic book stores and we buy everything we can out of dollar boxes.
We tell you about the weird stuff in them. We tell you about stuff that's related to them. We go into tangents. And we're very uninformed, so...
Oh my god, totally. But totally check out our podcast because you'll hear us just talk and joke about Marvel books and DC books from God only knows when.
That's right. It's our show, Worst Collection Ever, every Tuesday on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts. Download, rate, subscribe, tell a friend.
It'll be good and terrible, but good.
Okay, sadly, this is going to be our final round of Alterna Comics Spinner Rack for this episode. We will go ahead and start with Mr. Fix-It. You read the first issue of the 3-issue miniseries Croak, $1.50 comic by Cody Andrew Sousa, Francesco La Quinta, Chris O'Halloran, and Desi Cienti. Deep in the woods, their worst nightmares came to life. So what was this one?
So how the fuck do I keep getting these weird amateur hour writing style books?
Hey man, sometimes
Mac keeps getting like these really good, interesting stories, and I'm like, I go with the art. The art's pretty decent. It looks like now again, we're at the bottom of the barrel of your selection, so I wasn't like ecstatic to grab this book, but I went with it anyway.
All I'm saying is that the consistent aspect, the non-variable, is you.
Nah, man, these are shitty books. Like, I think I just grabbed the bottom of the barrel of these type books. Like, Mac just looked at it and was like, these are the writers that we got potential. These guys just paid their $9.95 to make their books.
He has the eye.
Yes. It's a weird book. 3 friends going camping in the woods. 2 guys and a woman. Murderish feel, like, 2 grown men taking a woman out in the woods. Her first time camping. And it's just dialogue of them walking, talking, and they're basically just kind of bitching about, like, their first time camping and where they're going and the trail and...
The Blair Witch comic.
Yes. They finally get to an area and it turns out one of the guys forgot to bring the tent. So you have a little bit of an argument and they're like, well, we'll just sleep in our sleeping bags under the stars. And the woman in her grandeur, she's the one that brings everyone together and says, no, look, this is fine. We're going to make it. We'll make it work. Don't worry. So one of the guys walks off huffing and puffing. They build a little fire. They get their little sleeping bags ready. And one guy decides to start telling ghost stories. And they're talking about this character that's taken out to a swamp and beaten and left for dead. And then all of a sudden, all the people that attacked him are disappearing one by one. And as the guy's completing the story, his 2 friends call bullshit on it because they're like, in all the times you come out of here, is there a swamp? No. They start punching holes in his story. So we're sitting there talking, and then all of a sudden they hear a sound. in the very beginning of the book, they talk about a camera that they're bringing for a project. She, in the book, turns around with the camera. You see some kind of weird shape in the woods. She begins to chase after it and then begins to be chased by it. So she's running. She falls down. The camera is clicking away. You think she's going to reach for the camera. She reaches for a rock and bashes her assailant in the head and hits him a few more times. And there's some cool images of it, like, you know, from the camera's point of view of her beating the shit out of whatever it is with a rock. And then somebody screaming, stop, stop, stop. Colin, which was one of the characters. And it turns out I guess we're going to scare her. And half his head is bashed in. She's freaking out. There's also an image and there was a creature. Some kind of chicken man looking creature. And that's the end of the book.
How would you grade the book?
Dude, I've been swinging like, horrid, man. No, I wouldn't even pick up the next issue. I don't care if it's $1.50.
How would you rank it against the other books that you've read?
It's weaker. It's the weakest of the bunch.
It's the weakest of the three?
Just to show you how bad it is, I've already forgotten what the other ones were. That's how bad.
Because your streak is bad.
I'm assuming so, but I've literally forgot everything I've just read in the last, 2 hours we've been reading.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgotten everything I've read. I mean, I vaguely remember the kids one. Did I read something between that was different? I read 2 kid books, the kids that are out living their parents, and then I have no idea what else I've read. That's how these have been bad trips to the comic shop for me.
No, I think you just went from The Wicked Righteous to Croak because you did 2 issues in a row of the
Okay. I just feel like there was something in the middle that was like almost as bad. I can't.
It throws it off because Mac had a streak where he went through what we had of a miniseries available. You know, he couldn't finish it, and then I just had a streak myself. I went with Mother Russia, a 3-issue limited series, $1.50 by Jeff McCombsey, who based on ads in the comics is a New York Times best-selling writer-artist, which is one of the things that made me want to pick it up. It also helps that it's set during World War II. It turns out that zombies have taken over the world, just like in most zombie stories. It just so happens that this takes place during World War II in Stalingrad. There's only a handful of survivors. There's a little baby who's walking around, a field of zombies. There's a Russian female sniper, and there's a male Nazi survivor. And basically they end up working together to try to save each other, but especially the kid and also a dog that's helping them out. It's
a dog, you say?
A dog,
and
I say.
that issue over.
Here's the thing. It's very slight read. I'm not sure if I'd have been totally happy if I paid $4.50 for a 66-page black and white story about, what I read. But as individual $1.50 books, I thought it was nice enough. I think I'd have been a little pissed off if I read them as individual comics, reading them all in a run. I think it took me maybe 20 minutes to read all 3 of them. I enjoyed it well enough. I did really like the art. And it's a good thing that the writer is also the artist. If there were 2 different people, I'd been really sorry for the artist. But the writer just liked having long stretches without any dialogue at all. And then a lot of those stretches also involved the German character speaking in German because the default language is Russian. So there just wasn't a lot to read. It was mostly visuals. But I like the art. I like zombies. I like mid-century Russian propaganda. So there was a lot there for me to enjoy. I got a kick out of it. What I didn't catch before is that all 3 of the covers from the miniseries are G.I. Joe riffs, swipes, homages, whatever you want to call it. And one of them in particular was a story arc involving Outback that I was a big fan of. It was like the last major G.I. Joe story arc that I was really into before I got out of G.I. Joe comics. So I dug that. I would definitely recommend it for the price. I'm also kind of glad that it was black and white. I think there's an instance where you're better off with black and white than bad coloring like with Scrimshaw. It's not even bad coloring. It was just inappropriate for the publication, how it was going to see print. Of the books, I was the happiest with Mother Russia, obviously in part because I read the whole damn miniseries.
All right, so I picked up the issue that I thought for sure Monsieur Fixit was going to pick up. This is called The Chair.
And you only picked that up because you could not continue with Doppelganger. Number 2 is not out yet.
There is no Doppelganger number 2. I actually want to read the 4 issues of Doppelganger. I fucking want to know what happens. And I want the last fucking issue of goddamn Intruder or Trans, whatever it was.
It's on order. Well, I'll make that happen.
All right. So I decided to pick up The Chair just because I keep seeing it every time I go in there and nobody's grabbing the shit. And it was the previews for the Blu-ray movie version of it, I guess, in like every issue I picked up. So I felt I was destined to be in this chair.
Well, and I finally got an issue with that ad, and it was very highly praised in the ad.
Yeah. Well, did you see who's praising it? Did you read the name of the publications? I think they were like Twitter handles. I'm joking. Okay, anyway, so this is $1 instead of the $1.50 joints that I've been reading so far. It is by Peter Simeti. He's the writer, inker, letterer, and cover colors. Kevin Christensen pencils cover, and Aaron Kaut editor. So this book, I should just set up the art first. It is rough. This is all done like with black charcoal. And I'm not joking. I think it's literally black charcoal with maybe some additional computer faux charcoaling over it. I mean, it is black black and white and gray, and that's this whole book. And I should say it's 90% black with some white and some gray. It starts off with the guy sitting in his prison cell, and he's sort of he's not in a good place. And he's saying, I guess this is where my tax dollars went, putting innocent people in prison for years. Who am I kidding? These fuckers are nowhere near innocent. Murderers, rapists, child killers, terrorists, serial killers, monsters that look like you and me. This guy knocks on the door, and he's like, hey, Sullivan, rise and shine, bitch, it's mealtime. And he says, at least I'm not hungry. That asshole likes to piss in the food. So this is not the best prison industrial complex anybody could hope to go to. So then it sets up why he's there. He has a life that he'd forgotten because he's been in prison for 10 years. He had a great job. He had a great family. All of it gone over the blink of an eye. I guess he was trying to retire early, and he got into a huge argument with his boss who wasn't going to let him retire early. And then that night, there was a murder at his kid's school, the boss's kid's school, where 12 kids were murdered. And because his kid was one of the 12, they implicated this employee who he had just had a spat with in the crime. So he's basically false in prison for the murder of these kids. So he's basically saying how his life's gone. He doesn't even bother to bathe anymore. He smells like piss and shit and yada, yada, yada. And it wasn't all fancy. There was no interviews, no TV documentaries done on him. He's basically been locked away, and his family's never called him, and he's just been forgotten about. And there's this, let's see what happens. They're going around showing you like the other inmates that are sort of around him. One dude's chained up, and he's been tortured, and he's all fucked up because there's nefarious shit going down in this prison. And he says every now and then and there's some other dude who's like a religious zealot who's just screaming all the time. And he says they let everybody out to kind of mingle with each other because what's the worst that happened? We're all in here with the death penalty. So the worst thing that happens is we kill one of the guys early. They just let us kill each other or whatever. So at one point he meets one dude who's also innocent, and they're kind of talking and chatting, and they're talking, and then he goes, tis, tis. There's a voice that says, tis, tis, no sharing allowed, which I don't know. I guess they were sharing food or something? Because the guy had made a comment that, oh, he didn't just piss in my food this time. Like, I guess he got I know, this book is fucking nasty as shit. So I don't know if the dude gave him food. The art's not very clear with what exactly happens. So he goes and he touches one of the fences, and they turn a dial, and it like electrocutes him and like blows the guy in half. Like it explodes him. And the dude's like, Jimmy, no! And the guards come out and just start beating the shit out of him. So then he's sitting there and he's sort of like fed up because that guy was actually good in the prison amongst all these terrorists and murderers and child murderers and stuff. They send a guard in to clean it up. And he's like, oh boy, this is a messy one, mister. And they're all in these like gas mask looking things. So he's cleaning up this guy's exploded body. And as he's cleaning up, the dude snaps and he runs over and he pulls the dude's mask off and takes the mop he was using to clean up and jams it down his throat, killing him. The guards bust in, knock him out, and they put him in this room, and he's like tied up on like one of those stretcher kind of deals, you know, where they tie your arms up at the top and their feet at the bottom. And he goes, you've had fun, Mr. Sullivan. Now it's time for mine. And it's the warden is next. And he's just like a dude with sort of beady glasses. Like, I don't know, that's a pretty common looking guy. Anyway, and that's where it ends.
So what did you think of the chair?
I mean, it's intriguing, but I'm not really sure. It's $1. So for me to listen to, and I hate going back to the price because that sounds kind of like, I feel like I'm patronizing it. But if this was a $5 book, I'd probably be like, no. But look, it's going to cost me $4 to read this entire 4-issue miniseries. I'd pick this up to see. So what are they going to do? Is this going to be the story of him getting out of the prison, overthrowing the prison, escaping the prison? With how fucking nihilistic this first issue is, he could not. Maybe he just gets fucking killed. Or is it going to be, is he going to find someone in the prison who actually committed this crime and he's going to try and clear his name and get out? It doesn't seem like this is sort of the type of place that does that kind of business.
Well, so far it seems like the first issue is just a collection of sadistic acts.
Really, really fucked up shit happening.
And it's like, are you going to have a story come out of that? The assumption is that you will, but so far it's...
So I'll put it like this. I'm like how Mr. Fix-It was with that first story he read. I'd give this one other issue to see where it's going to go. And if the next issue was just more people shitting in food and pissing on people and blowing people up, I'd tap out. Or if the next issue was the warden just torturing the guy, I have no interest in just reading people get shit on all day. So anyway, that's The Chair.
Well, you also expressed some interest in the movie as well.
Oh yeah, because apparently they, so yeah, like I said, they kept showing these advertisements for this. I guess it's a movie? It's a Blu-ray box.
Well, I mean, there are some recognizable names in there. Zach Galligan of Gremlins fame. The late Roddy Piper is apparently in the movie.
No shit?
He's the last credited, yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, I didn't read that much into it. I just the Blu-ray case. I was like, oh, this is about a movie, not the comic book. Not thinking I was going to eventually be grabbing said chair. Yeah, so I wonder if it's Roddy Piper in the chair.
No, he's the
chair.
Star.
The chair apparently is the electric chair. That's the
my assumption. Yeah,
that's the little preview box in the corner. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in that. It was, despite how the art is rough, dude, but it works with what's going on in the book, so it's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't know how much fine detail you want on literal shit on a single, you know.
No. But yeah, I think like I said, I'd pick up another issue and see where it goes. But they got one more issue to kind of actually like is this gonna be 4 issues people getting shit on, or are you gonna actually give me something out of this? That's the question.
Right. So generally speaking, our summation is that the price point is a major aspect of what makes these books desirable. If they were more expensive, we would probably be having some issues with them. But given that they're so reasonably priced and reasonably entertaining for the most part, worth picking up at the price.
Yeah, I think absolutely. This, again, apparently I picked different things than you guys did. But like when you see something...
Mine were okay. Amazing Age was alright. I just decided to try something a little different for the next one. And I like Mother Russia okay.
So I haven't read comics in a long time, but it always seemed to me when I was reading Marvel comics back in the 90s, if I saw Ultraverse, it's a bunch of analogs, right? Whereas like I'm reading Doppelganger. I've never read anything like Doppelganger.
Which is funny because it's literally an analog
it's
of this other
literally
human being.
A guy who is right. The closest is maybe Multiplicity with Michael Keaton, right? I don't even fucking know. That's so different. And Intruder, Trespasser, whatever I read, that one had some similarities, some cliches in it. But again, it was sort of had my interest piqued enough that I keep reading it. And maybe because the industry's changed, maybe this is more the norm in independent comics. That there is just sort of these crazy wild ideas, and maybe this isn't as different as it seems to me.
I'll be
but
honest
I'm
with you, though.
very impressed with the production quality. Production quality. I'm impressed with the price point, and I'm impressed with the creativity and the content.
Well, and I love seeing ads for stuff that I give a shit about too. One of the things that I hated with the shift in modern times is that they're either giving me an ad for another comic book, which I've already seen a billion times already, thanks to the internet, thanks to picking up previews catalogs, things like that. I love cracking open this book and seeing ads for local comic shops and online sites and, free comics you can find. Bedrock City, a local comic chain, is represented in a list of all the books, all the comic shops that are supporting this initiative. There's just a lot of fun stuff in there. I like seeing ads that are relevant, ads for conventions, like local conventions and shit. It feels like kind of old school comics. I think they're shooting for that. I think that they hit the mark on that. And given the price point, I have no regrets about picking up these books.
But and the other thing is, I love this is 1 in a 4 issue limited series.
Yeah.
They all say at the top 1 of 4, 1 of 6. No bullshit about it. This is going to be 4 issues. So I know this isn't going to drag on, and I may read this for a year and not have any sort of closure. I know I've got closure in 3 issues on this. Relatively speaking, they may say, look, we're going to leave this as a cliffhanger. There'll be another 4-part or, whatever. But to me, that helps kind of wet the palate a little bit more. I know I've only got to pick up $4 worth of the chair. So I may be inclined to be like, nah, but because I know I've only got 4 issues, I'd probably pick up all 4. You know what? Even if issue 2 kind of sucks, I may just buy the other 2 because it's $2. I could lose $2 tomorrow, so I might as well pick up some comic books with it.
And me, as a guy who buys comics on a monthly basis, I just by default, I throw all these books into my cart because there's no reason not to. If I can buy an entire selection of books from a company for a few bucks, why the fuck not?
Well, because
if there's only one home run out of the lot, that's still better batting average than what I get from a $4 fucking comic from.
That's exactly what I was going to say. One good book out of 4. Well, okay, so you spent $6 on 4 books and you get one good out of it. Well, you could spend $8 on 2 books and they could both suck from Marvel or DC. So the hit rate's better. You know what I mean? There's a significant chance that it's better. So
I just feel better about supporting the actual creators, a small company. I just feel better about it. It makes me happy.
As somebody who, in my era, when I'm looking at independent comics and this sort of jumpstart label stuff, the production quality just seems way better than what I'm used to. So that really,
I don't have no idea. It must be movie money because I have no idea of how they're able to make books of this quality at that price point.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, I'm gonna read them while they're there, I guess.
Yeah. And we'll revisit Alterna comics in the future. I think I'll let a pile build up again, and we'll play around with this again. And hopefully, Mr. Fix-It specifically will have better luck on the next round.
Please,
read Doppelganger next time.
I will.
I actually think you'd like.
I didn't prohibit you guys from reading books, but maybe we let there be a little bit of gap and then read them because they'll be a little less fresh in the memory.
Dark and unholy home of Necros the Mad, reputed to be the most evil and cunning of the black sorcerers. His evil is legendary, causing catastrophe after catastrophe.
And so finally, our Cerebus overview. We're starting on page 273 of the telephone book, which would be equivalent to Cerebus number 13.
I feel like I'm at church right now.
First story is Black Magicking, where Cerebus runs afoul of religious zealots in a very unsophisticated flyover state of ancient times. He ends up trapped in a temple devoted to a sorcerer who practices black magic and has his own golem. Gets caught between the angry villagers and the golem.
Who dares enter the lair
of Necros.
I am Dispuse. I was looking for...
None may enter the dark castle of Necros, save that they are evil.
Please, Are
you evil? Well.
Evil? Yes, I'm evil. I look down women's dresses. I take Taram's name in vain. I take more than my share at dinner. I shirk my chores. Evil. I'm positively satanic.
Evil, yes, but also incredibly boring.
The next story is Silver Spoon, although I don't think that's the actual title of the comic book. It's the adventures of a Prince Valiant parody. For the initial chunk of this issue, it's actually told in the style of the old Prince Valiant books, where there's no dialogue. Everything is being told in narration over a handful of panels. It introduces a very important character to the overall Cerebus mythos, Lord Julius.
He meets twice a week with a cook to plan military strategy.
Who is basically Groucho Marx transplanted to these ancient times. He is a bureaucrat who runs the very powerful, rich merchant city of Palnu. And the way that he manages to retain control of this city is by creating a bureaucracy so confusing that nobody knows what anybody else does.
As I said, you'll be in charge of my security forces. You'll make sure no one assassinates me. If they do, you're fired.
For instance, he recruits Cerebus as the head of his kitchen staff, which is actually the head of his security.
I'm not as stupid as I look, my boy. Suppose I put you in charge of 5 men. It'll be 6, then 10. Inside of 6 months, you'll be commanding more manpower than the senior aide to the file clerk. And a fine kettle of fish that would be.
Cerebus's task was stopping an assassination attempt, which he does in the first story. And just go over the issue titles for the succeeding stories, because I don't think I need to do this piece by piece. Let's see. The succeeding stories are The Walls of Palnu, A Day in the Pits, A Night at the Mosque, and Champion. This extended arc tells the story of how Cerebus tries to rout a coup within the city of Palnu, ends up joining that coup, is outsmarting both sides because they're both so incompetent or so paranoid that they can't function anymore, and he's able to take advantage of that, wage war against the city that had been his benefactor. The artwork is getting progressively better. Dave Sim is really beginning to master Zipatone, especially since that's the primary way in which Cerebus is represented, is through the shading. Especially the splash page on the final story that we're discussing, Champion. It's a lush shot of Cerebus walking in the rain, heavy pendulous drops of water coming off of his skin. Great looking shot. Stories are fairly fun, still not really funny, and the story isn't deep enough to where I'm totally engaged in it, but you're seeing a greater and greater sophistication. It's moving further and further beyond just being a Conan parody.
Oh no, I catch you employing even one freelance spy and I'll have you reduced to Executive Secretary of the Interior. So fast you won't remember what a kitchen looks like.
This is an imaginary podcast, which may never have happened.
The Shortbox Showcase.
But then again may have. About a father and daughter. I'm Professor Allen.
And I'm Emily.
Who came from Ohio and talked about comics.
Identity Crisis.
Lone Wolf and Cub.
Hergé's Tintin.
White Tiger. It tells of their rise to glory, when the great guests were yet to be booked.
I didn't know this was going to be the Jimmy Olsen Hate Podcast.
It's always the Jimmy Olsen Hate Podcast.
And the great feats of editing not yet performed.
This is Ultraman, this is Ultra 7, this is Ultraman Jack, and this is Ultraman Taro, and this is Ultraman Leo, and this is
Of how they spoke at length. When I read a comic, story comes first and art comes second.
Continuity is really the brainchild of nitpicking nerds the world over.
Those are our people, Emily. And reviewed in brief tales that explore creatively the bounds of a given character's history.
Superman has basically the same relationship with Wonder Woman that he has with Batman.
Of brilliant creators before their fall from grace. This is the era where Miller is at the height of his creative and artistic powers, and the ability of strong writing to encapsulate and transcend its time.
Flash of Two Earths by Gardner Fox.
This is an imaginary podcast. Aren't they all? Shortbox Showcase is part of the Relatively Geeky family of podcasts. Check us out on the web at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search in iTunes for Relatively Geeky or Shortbox Showcase. And remember, we're not experts.
We're just family.
So what are these, like Facebook likes or some shit?
Yeah, you started the Facebook page since the last time we had an episode of The Under Guys over 2 years ago. And so those are the Facebook likes and shares from the Reduxes when we inserted those episodes into the Rolled Spine feed.
What?
Ali Batts, Debache, Keith G. Baker, Michael Siskoid Albert, Michael Wagner, Scott Rowland. Our first comment comes from Keith G. Baker. Just finished up the episode. Good stuff. Question. As someone who has not read any of them, what would y'all go with, Cerebus, Bone, or Savage Dragon for a long-term commitment?
Who asked?
Keith G. Baker.
Savage Dragon.
Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon it is. Another comment comes from Keith G. Baker. Underguides, your home for Mecha Jizz Comics commentary. That was on our
Prison Pit.
The Prison Pit shit. That was awesome. And what are these, likes or some shit?
Those are vintage retweets and likes.
This is retweets of episode 3, the final episode that came out over 2 years ago. Adam Blackmoon and Cerebus Films, Cerebus Online, CJ, Comics Tweets, David Fiore, DSNRS, Eternal Rage, Firestorm Fan, Joseph Crawford, Knowing Flame Comics, Cord Industries, Rick, Rod George, Ryan Rich, Siskoid, Trekker Talk. Our next comment comes from Sean McLaughlin. Hey, a new Underguides. Cool. Ryan, Count Druncula, Daly, who is now not Count Druncula anymore.
Yeah, it's been a while since he's used that handle.
On underwhelming response to Jizz Mech, in my defense, I may have thought I was dreaming after I listened to that episode. Then you should have read the book. Our next comment comes from King Size Comics, Giant Size Fun, aka Kyle Benning. Meant to tweet you the other day when the Underguides episode went up, but I don't think I did. More Underguides episodes, please.
Eventually.
Our next comment comes from Siskoid. Haven't read Prison Pit, but I guess I don't need to. My favorite transgressive, quote-unquote, comic of this type is still Chester Brown's Ed the Happy Clown, and I hope you cover it one day.
I've never read that. I want to.
Rick Remender's gone a long way since I first noticed him in All New Adam, where he finished off the series with the least humor possible. I love his take on Venom, of all things, and Deadly Class is without a doubt his opus. It's certainly the most...
I lost track of Deadly Class and I just started rereading it again. It is still awesome, but I do think that Lowe gives it a run for its money. Lowe is also an excellent book.
It's certainly the most personal series he's ever attempted, and being X-Men with assassins instead of mutants isn't a bad hook.
Just a few more quick shout-outs before we go. To Carlos Castillo, Selena Rodriguez, Comics Tweet, Nordtechibot, Odell Abner Dracula, who asked, more like this please, Rad Adventures Podcast Network, Robert Lopez, Rod Jorge, Trey Baldwin, and Xenozoic Xenophiles. We'll be back much, much sooner than 2.5 years from now, I promise. Like, way sooner.
The Underguides is a Rolled Spine podcast. All references to copyrighted works and audio clips employed are believed covered under fair use, with no infringement intended against their copyright holders. The views expressed in this podcast are assumed legitimate, truthful, and solely possessed by the speaker.